guys, how's it going? Oh, hopefully everything's working. Yeah, okay. It's been a little while since we've done a stream, and I thought I'd do one today. And after kind of doing some reading and seeing what's going on in the comic book world, I settled on this. This is a new comic book that came out today, though I will be mostly. What's it called? I only got the digital version, so I don't have a print copy on me. Sorry, I'm a little distracted just because I'm sharing this on our social medias, and I can hear my phone going off about it right now. I'll just leave that be for the moment. But yeah, hopefully everyone's doing well. There we go. That's all done. Close that and that, and then I can focus on this. Oh hey, Dark Side's in chat. That's pretty funny because I don't know if you can tell. That'll block it more actually. Over in the corner here, I have Dark Side written just from the Another Nail recording. That light's kind of got a halo effect going on, but I'm just gonna roll with it. Hey, that is random photos from other stuff I was working on. Let's try this again. Fun photos for a future project, but unrelated nonetheless. So, Archie World Tour number 5, I believe, but I got a little confused by that. Yeah, okay. So, but it's the library edition where they are putting stuff together, because this is a 184-page graphic novel, which you're seeing the first few pages of over here. And I picked this out just because I saw a couple articles talking about it and previewing it and kind of just going over the direction. Archie's 80 years old right now, kind of putting him right in line with characters like Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, all these Golden Age characters, and like Captain America and that sort of thing. So it's been interesting. And then we have stuff like Riverdale out there, which we've talked about before on this channel through the best and worst of year-end things that I do sometimes. I don't remember which year that was, but I did talk about Riverdale for one of the worst ofs, and that hasn't changed. Riverdale is this audacious train wreck that I think is carried in large part by people who just sort of a mixture of hate watch it or kind of maybe just sort of enjoy it with like kind of giving it a little bit of leg room. Darkseid says, have you heard that Venom 2 has been released? Yes. Now, I don't know if it's different in Canada or something like that, or if it got released early on us or something, but I have the date written for us to go see it on October 15th, which is either our plan or just when it's available for us. But yeah, we'll definitely be talking about it when that happens. I've heard really good things, though, from sources I usually consider pretty reliable opinions, that it sort of shakes up the comic book movie dynamic in a needed way. I saw the trailer for it before Shang-Chi, and it was alright. But I've never been a huge fan of the Venom movie, and was always a little skeptical of Woody Harrelson playing Cletus Cassidy. So, we'll see. But, hey, like I said, the people who liked it and recommended it don't usually steer me wrong, so I'm pretty optimistic about it. But yeah, as for Archie, it's a really interesting place for this series because we have like something that's 80 years old, but it's not like Batman or the DC superheroes or some of Marvel's older superheroes where they're these big names, they have all this potential future ahead of them, and there's a lot of interesting things going on with both companies. Archie has kind of been doing the same thing for, as far as I can tell, as long as I've been alive and as long as the character's been alive. Where they publish these digests, they have like the goofy jokes, they're kind of stuck in this idealized post-World War II dynamic of sorry, I got distracted by that question there. Like American society, and It's fine. I actually read quite a bit of Archie as a kid, but not out of personal interest, if that makes sense. My sisters really liked it, and those books would be around. And when you're younger, and there wasn't as many like smartphone devices and stuff, and there were all these books sitting by the toilet, they got read by me quite a bit. And I always found the jokes really corny and repetitive. Every character's kind of got their thing to them, and then the jokes are just variations on that. So Jughead is asexual and likes food, and that's the joke. Archie is like milquetoast boring, but he has Betty and Veronica like him. Betty's kind of a bit more of like a neat freak or a typical girl, whereas Veronica's kind of got that spoiled rich person angle to it. If you know Archie, it's just the same thing over and over again. But when the guy who like is in charge of Riverdale, the show, I think, and the Archie Comics, whose name escapes me and I'm not going to bother looking up now, took over like a decade or two ago now, he wanted to kind of change that a little bit and start to try different things, which has ultimately led to stuff like The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Riverdale, and all its spin-offs, and any other attempts to do different things with Archie in the comic book world. And some of that stuff has been successful and is fun, engaging, and genuinely different from the decades of Archie Digest comics that were published over the years. I like Afterlife with Archie. I think it's a refreshing take on the characters that's a little ballsy in what it does. It's kind of what like DC's was before DC's ever existed, I should say. And I appreciate that. That makes it like a pretty engaging story overall. And I haven't like read it all or looked back on it in some time, but from what I recall, I enjoyed it. And that kind of led into stuff like The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the comics, which led to the series. And that series had potential, but it kind of fell apart and has been canceled now. And Riverdale also kind of had potential and represented that kind of dynamic. I think they were experimenting with stuff like that in different comics. I remember Mark Waid was writing stuff with Archie for a bit and trying stuff, and apparently did a good job, though I never got around to reading those. And there are like Riverdale books that are much more like the series than anything like the Archie Digest comics. So, and then of course I think maybe on top of all of that, like the coup de grace, the height of achievement and trying to do different things with Archie Comics is Archie versus Predator, which is a really fun thing by DeCampi. I forget what her first name is. Alex DeCampi, I want to say, or something like that, but she did such a good job with that series. So Archie really has this potential, and for a while that potential was also expressed in the Sonic books. That they did like Sonic comics for decades, and that also was like its own separate thing, but not really the same like Archie. Those books like had their own huge canon and continuity to them, which is interesting. I don't know much about it, but then Sonic, I believe, is fully shifted over to IDW at this point, and those comics, from what I've heard, are also good, but it does mean that Archie is in this weird place. So for Archie to take that lead and kind of maybe build its own ideas feels warranted, and is really, I think, how this company is going to survive. Because while there will always be a market for these digest stories where they're just telling the same classic Archie stories, I think that market is going to increasingly become more narrow and niche, to the extent that maybe at best they can keep doing like one or two of these digital comics and maybe being like selling this stuff through Scholastic on top of that, which is lucrative and potentially there. But I do kind of like, I struggle to see kids getting into a book like this, for example, even though kids are the only level of maturity I could see really enjoying these books. So I guess now is the time we can talk a little bit about World Tour. But all of these things I'm bringing up are why I care at all about Archie and think that there's some potential there. And then you read stuff like this and it's like, well, they still are making this digest content where Archie's in a band, he's going to go around on tour, and he goes to different countries around the world and sees the Great Wall of China and this and that. And it really just kind of reads like a very typical Archie story until the ending, when it kind of bizarrely also becomes a bit of an action story. But if you're looking at the art here, this is not the kind of art that conveys fun action, so it just feels bizarre. Darkseid is asking, which comic do you do most, in reference to me talking about the DC and Marvel stuff, and I try and keep it equal between the two, but I think I'll always have a bit of an edge towards Marvel, and it's because you can kind of go toe-to-toe with DC with a lot of Marvel's stuff, and then they more or less equal each other out, but then you have the X-Men, which is like a whole extra thing on top of all of Marvel's existing content, and the X-Men alone are kind of its own franchise and something that is just a whole other thing. And Marvel has Spider-Man, who I've always kind of been a bit of a personal fan of, like if we're talking about which characters are my favorites and stuff. So I think I'll always lean a bit towards Marvel, but like I do not give a damn about the people who get so one-sided over one or the other, because DC's full of important characters and stuff I like, but also the world would be so much worse without them. Like it's better to have the two companies competing against each other and trying to one-up one another and stuff. Otherwise, they're going to get real stagnant. And I think that's also part of Archie's problem, is nothing really competes with it in the comic book world, if you ask me. There are these kind of classic, like, they're like, when I say digest books, that's what they are, like a specific form of magazine where it's just this light, unchallenging read. And now that I say it like that, like, yeah, there will be a market for that. It's just a shame because all these other Archie books are out there that could really challenge it. And when we come to World Tour, it's like, yeah, World Tour should do that as well. Because, yes, Archie, like, there is space for these kind of, like, classic stories, but I think what World Tour is all about is kind of diversifying Archie a bit. So all of a sudden there's this Raj kid, and he's, I guess, like, Archie's band manager and stuff, and he travels along with them. There's all these new characters. And meanwhile, the bulk of the story in terms of its romance arc is, like, that it sorry, I completely lost track of what I was saying. I read chat while I go along, and then it throws me off. Oh, the bulk of the romance is not between Archie, Betty, and Veronica, but more Archie and Valerie of Josie and the Pussycats, and that's a whole thing throughout this story. So we have like this more diversity, and Archie in an interracial relationship, and I think that is the right direction. And that's where I kind of thought, oh, maybe World Tour can do something different. But I think it really doesn't matter. They're throwing these characters in. It's the most forced diversity thing ever, but it also, like, these characters and their race are borderline irrelevant because they're all just sitting there doing the Archie thing, shuffling from one country to the next, seeing the most baseline level landmarks at each country. So, like I mentioned, the Great Wall of China, like, that's what we see when we go to there, obviously. And it's not like I'm saying that's racist. I'm saying it's boring, because, like, we go to, it's the same thing when you go to Canada and other countries as well. There's not a lot to this book. Darkseid is saying, do you prefer do World War Hulk, which is grammatically incoherent, so I'm just gonna move right on. I don't know what you're even asking there, man. But the Shadowcatcher asks, isn't Archie dead in the comics? And I referred to the Mark Waid books where he killed them off, but that was a while ago. And I assume, A, this stuff's out of continuity. I know the digest stuff was, but B, if they did that, those books are probably, like, are they still going on with Archie dead? I really don't know. But it is the kind of thing that one can Google, and I'm not really chastising you, Shadowcatcher. I'm going to Google it right now, because I have no idea. And I guess, like, oh, I should have looked it up beforehand, but honestly, like, I don't really care. It doesn't feel as though they really got any new direction for the character, or, like, the death thing. I had never really read those books, because, like I said, the promise of trying to engage the content in a new direction sort of feels like it fell flat and wasn't all that consistently done. I'm looking for the core series that did that, and it doesn't even look like it's really around at the moment. Like, I see Chillin' Adventures of Sabrina stuff, Kevin apparently has his own series. But let me look around a bit and see what I can find out. Well, let's see. Is Archie still dead in the comics? Yes? Yeah, so that series apparently ends with the final issue 1 year after his death. But he's clearly back alive again, based on what they're saying here. What's going on? Also, apparently he's dating Sabrina right now. Okay. So it really is just that one series, because they're doing all this other stuff. And like I said, the most recent thing I can read here in terms of anything like that is him dating Sabrina Spellman. But that continuity, like we just said, is clearly light, because like they haven't followed up on that or anything. And as I was kind of referring to earlier, I didn't really feel like anything was made of it because there's never any content there. Darkseid clarified himself, saying, "What I say is, would you like to review World War Hulk? I think it's on my to-do list, and I can bump it up a bit for you." But yeah, so it's just a bit disappointing, and I wish that Archie would challenge itself in some sort of way. I do understand that the pandemic probably threw a lot of a wrench into that sort of thing, but I'm looking over their current publications, and it's all just their usual stuff of the digest, the like little one-shot stuff, and then there's an Archie and Katy Kean series apparently. Cool looking art and that sort of thing, but again, like, all those cool ideas just sort of feel like they've floated to the wayside, and hopefully they can one day do something again. But with all these shows being canceled and Riverdale being the last one standing, and it kind of feeling like it's just running out the contract on all its actors, there's no way they're going to stay beyond that, I don't think. It is just a bit of a shame. I would like to see a bit of, like, more creativity out of it, but I think part of the problem is the guy who's running it all, that I think his name's Roberto or something like that, and he's in charge of writing at Riverdale. Like, he has the right ambition for wanting to put Archie in a new direction, but unfortunately hasn't really delivered. So hopefully some changes can be made, and maybe we bring on talent like DeCampi again to kind of right this ship. But until something happens or something changes, like, it was a bit of a boring read, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, but I think we'll leave it there. Just I thought it'd be fun to check out what people thought about Archie and stuff. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I can do more of these reviews, and we can kind of push it in a different direction or something, or I can look at the more mainline, non-digesty comics to see if there's anything different or of interest going on at all. But until then, I think we're just going to leave it at that. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time here on Comic Island.